Welcome to In Touch Crime Beat. I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson.
Out of jail, okay? Don't mess up.
And those are the people, those repeat offenders, the ones that go to prison. And
I say we're the #1 rated radio show in the whole country.
The jury has to put themselves, when they make this decision, they have to try to put themselves in the mind of the person that's being attacked, that uses deadly physical force in response. Now, Trayvon Martin was on his back, apparently, and the only thing I got to go on is what I
Well, the facts, I don't think anyone's arguing that Trayvon Martin was on his back.
And he'd already been smashed in the face. This guy was over him, pummeling him.
At this point, he was losing the fight. Well, and fight is not even a good word, according to Trayvon. According to Zimmerman, at this point, he was being assaulted, and he was.
And his head was being bashed on the sidewalk.
He never said there was a fight.
So the jury has to put themselves in his position. Did he think he was in danger of serious physical injury or death? And if he did, then he's entitled to use deadly physical force in response.
And what he told the police, because he didn't testify, because he didn't have to testify, because people have to remember, Zimmerman, he had a choice when the police wanted to talk to him, whether or not to talk to the police or not, ask for an attorney to be present. And he said, no, you know what, this is what happened, and I'm going to cooperate and tell you exactly what happened. And he told his side of the story. And the gist of it is that he said that I was being assaulted. I was on the ground. I had my face, smashed in, and my head was being smashed in the sidewalk. I felt there was a couple of issues, he said, when he did his police interview. I felt I was going to lose consciousness. And then he claimed that Trayvon Martin had found his gun and was going to try to disarm him. And what Zimmerman said, what his defense, when he explained it to the police, the reason that he wasn't arrested is he explained that I was losing it. There was a gun involved. Yes, it was mine, but I legally had it, and I felt like that if I did not pull the trigger, that this man was going to kill me. And that's pretty much what he told officers. And based on that, they said, well, that defined, to those officers, that defined reasonable fear of his life. And then, of course, and what people forget, and this is what aggravated me about the case so much, is when you and I used to work together in these situations, I'd go out as an investigator, and if it's clear and it's obvious that a criminal charge is appropriate, and I'm a homicide detective, then I arrest the person for murder. That's pretty much how it works. When you start getting into situations with the law where you get stand your ground or you get self-defense issues, then I'm going to wind up talking to the prosecutor at some point, because you have to prosecute this case that I'm going to send you at some point to make sure that, because you're the attorney, I'm not, and let's make sure that we're all on the same page and we come together and work for that decision. Where was the prosecutor in this case? Because the police obviously made a decision that they didn't feel comfortable with an arrest. The prosecutor had a choice. The local prosecutor, he could have taken this to the grand jury or simply recommended charges be brought. But instead he just stepped aside and said, yeah, I'm going to not be involved.
No.
What happened? Well,
no, you're wrong.
Happened? Oh, well, then clear.
They talked to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor agreed with their conclusion.
Okay.
See, that was the local prosecutor. Then, when that happened, that's when all of that's when the media got involved, and that's when.
So at that point, the checks and balances, everything was working. The police did not see a charge. The prosecutor agreed that there wasn't a charge wasn't appropriate. And the other thing, because another thing the prosecutor, at least you can do in our jurisdiction, is in some cases you choose to take something to the grand jury and let a jury of citizens, a panel of citizens basically, listen to the prosecution's side of the case and determine whether or not it's appropriate to even bring it to trial. Why did the prosecutor not do that in this case?
I don't know. All I know
why
is
would you not?
All I know is that he made the decision.
Okay.
But
there are times that you would decide not to take. I'm sorry. There are times you would decide not to take something to the grand jury too. That's the point.
Well, yeah, but typically, if it's even a close call, you take it and let the citizens. We've done that with citizens, and it's just so. But here's what happens. You know, they chose not to. The defense chose not to use stand your ground. They instead relied on self-defense. Now, stand your ground. Now, why did they do that? Because I've been thinking about that. Why didn't they choose to say, look, this was a stand your ground thing? And I think it was confusing enough that George Zimmerman approached Trayvon Martin first, you see, and then was going to leave, I guess. So what happens then, rather than have to deal with all of the confusion about whether or not that was starting it, and as a result the jury might think you lose your ability to you stand your ground as a defense, they said no, he was in the position of fearing for that he was going to suffer deadly physical force or death. And that's the reason he was then entitled to it, you see?
And we have to remember this, too, because it's become sort of urban legend that Zimmerman approached, when we say approached Trayvon Martin and said, hey, what are you doing here? It's my understanding Zimmerman never actually did that. He was surveilling Trayvon Martin, following him around, letting the police know where he was so they could approach him and make sure that everything was copacetic.
But do you see how that can, be, because he was kind of following him, that a jury could say, well, hell, if you didn't follow him around, then none of this would have happened.
But if citizens don't get involved, then police will never solve crimes.
Hey, Don, listen to me. The problem is this becomes a strategic decision by the defense attorneys. Mm-hmm. Now, what was the problem that then they appointed this special prosecutor because the media got all involved, and Al Sharpton and his types showed up and started raising so much hell that they appointed this special prosecutor who didn't take it to the grand jury. She wrote out her own affidavit, right, in support of a charge. Now, here's the problem that the prosecution had going in. Who were their witnesses? Their witnesses were the people who investigated it. And who investigated it were the people who said, there's no charge here. You see? Now, because if you followed this case at all, the media was just what they call incredulous. Mm-hmm. That's a great word I've just learned. They were incredulous that all of these witnesses seemed to be more in favor of the defendant than of the prosecution. Why? Because they made that conclusion in the first place, for crying out loud. Didn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to use the witnesses you got.
Well, what the detective said was interesting. The detective that initially investigated this, because I've been in his shoes. He said, "Look, when I first walked on the scene, I thought I had myself a homicide charge here, basically. You know, you've got one man armed, one man not, one man dead. Let's see how this works out." But then the more I spoke with George Zimmerman in the interview, the more I came to realize that it wasn't quite so clear-cut, and then it became even more clear to me that I wasn't comfortable bringing a charge against this guy. So that's what I would do as a detective, is wind up going to the prosecutor and going, "Oh, here's what we got," and then that's what happened. It wasn't like they supported Zimmerman. In fact, this is something that I know, because I've had contact with a couple of police officers in that area. They weren't a fan of Zimmerman in particular, but for a couple of reasons. Zimmerman was once arrested because he was in a bar, and the ABC came in to do their bar check.
Alcohol, beverage
Yeah,
control.
they came to their bar check, and Zimmerman was the type of personality that he was like, "Well, why are you guys in here? Why are you arrested? Do you have the authority to be in here? Whatever." He got in their way, and they locked him up. Okay, that happened. And then another time he rode with the police through a citizens ride-along program, and then he wound up complaining on one of the police officers because he felt like the police officer I don't know, maybe he fell asleep on duty or wasn't aggressive enough, or maybe he took too long of a lunch or something. It was something that he actually complained on the cup. So they were like, look, this guy he's just a little strange. I mean, that was their sort of they were not a friend of Zimmerman's either way, you know, and it was just spun that way. But when you put the cop on the stand and he or she has to relate the facts, you can't twist them either. It's like, look, this is what happened. You know, I mean, I didn't, from what I saw in the testimony, the detective wasn't anti-prosecution. He was being a witness. And when you put me on the stand as a witness, what do you want me to do?
Tell the truth.
That's the only thing a prosecutor ever wants you to do, is tell the truth. You know, even if, gosh, you know, man, I've never heard from a prosecutor, man, if you say that, that'll make us look bad. Never. It's you tell the truth. Now, I have heard from prosecutors, look, just answer when the defense asks a question, answer the question and shut up and let them answer the next question. Don't be rambling and giving your opinion and stuff. And, you know, this is about facts. Let me decide what facts need to be brought. Right? I mean, that's how that works. Anyway, I got me on a rant here.
Oh, no. Why do you say that?
Because you're rolling your eyes up. That's why I'm saying that. Well, but bottom line is people make it a complicated case, and there are elements to it that were complicated, but the most complicated thing here was, I think, the media's involvement, the media jumping to conclusions. But this says something about juries, too, because, you know, I heard them talking about the jury in this case, and the speculators, the talking heads on TV saying, well, this is an all-female jury, this isn't good for the defense. Why? You know, I mean, you cannot predict what an all-female jury is going to do. You can't predict what a jury of three guys and 3 girls, or 3 blacks and 3 whites, can you? I mean, have you ever been in a situation where you really think that that's a factor? I mean, you just, that's not.
Once the jury is selected in a case, any time that you spend worrying about the makeup of jury is wasted energy, because there's not one thing in the world you can do about it.
Tune into the following stations to hear the full episode.